Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our info session. We are here to present you the second call of the European Energy Communities Facility. As your speakers, my name is Giuliana Nadalucci. I am a project officer at Federen, and I'm here with my colleague Miriam from GNE Finance, and we will be going through all the details of this second call. So thank you, and we can start. So first of all, some housekeeping rules. To mute yourself when you're not speaking, and also a reminder that this is being recorded and this presentation will be saved and uploaded to our website, also with the slides to be shared. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments throughout the presentation. And by the end of it, we will go through all the questions, comments, and doubts that you may have. So next one, please. Okay, so for the agenda, we're about to explain to you what is, first of all, the facility, what is this grant program, the eligibility criteria, the evaluation criteria, how to apply. And as this is the second call, we might as well get through the top 10 mistakes that we saw in the first call. And then we will introduce you to our national experts that are handling the national help desks. Then we'll go through some questions in the comments and also the upcoming opportunities that we have. So next one, please. Okay, so the main purpose of the European Energy Communities Facility is to empower the energy communities across Europe. We are here to support at least 140 energy communities to develop a solid business plan. The first call we are currently supporting 73 energy communities. And for this second call, we are granting our funding to 71 energy communities. So the next one, please. So we see that the key challenges of energy communities, it's a range of challenges going through the lack of capacity, meaning human and financial resources, to the lack of knowledge of managing authorities about available funding and opportunities, also the lack of engagement and skills. And also many energy communities are very small, so they are excluded from programs such as ELINA, InvestEU, and so on, due to the initial too high investment. So for the next slide, please. So we are here basically to fill the gap. As said, the main purpose of the Enercon facility is to fund the development of business plan. We are in 31 countries, so we understand that there can be challenges and differences between the stages of these countries when it comes to supporting emerging energy communities. So we are here to fill this gap in between setting up an energy community and running an energy project. We understand that these challenges that are currently being faced by the energy communities can be mitigated by this fund to support the development of a business plan. Next slide, please. So basically how it works. The facility provides the funding, which is a grant of 45,000 euros. And also we have available the capacity building program, which is around 12 hours of learning that will guide you through all the basic steps of what is an energy community to how to develop the business plan, what it needs to be written to contain in this business plan, to make it a solid, bankable plan to attract private investment and also to develop this project in the implementation phase. So for the next slide. And as I said, where does the facility operate? We are currently accepting applications from all the 27 EU member states, plus Iceland, Ukraine, Moldova, and North Macedonia, in a total of 31 countries that can submit a proposal for our second call. Next one. So our beneficiaries from the first call, please after this presentation, go explore our website with further details about that. We supported 73 communities from 23 countries in a total of more than 80K members with 12 different technologies that they are developing in their business plan and the combination of these technologies as well. So for the next one. And the consortium, presenting to you the behind the scenes of the Enercon facility. We are led by Rescup as our project coordinator. And also we have Fadalen, GNE Finance, Ricardo, Ecoris, Energy Cities, and Acarion supporting the implementation and dissemination of this project. Next one. So we are anchoring in a network of 29 national experts, meaning that as you are hearing me now, this is the EU info session being presented to you in English, but we understand that language can be a barrier. So in order to mitigate this, we are working with our national experts, and they are the ones carrying out this project in their countries. They are the ones promoting this info session in their national languages in the upcoming days. And they are also providing support throughout the whole application process in their national languages as well. So next slide. And here are some of the faces of our national experts. They are promoting the call and they are supporting the beneficiaries. But one thing, and let me make myself very clear, is that they cannot be responsible for the writing of the application, meaning that if you need support throughout the application process, you can reach out to them with questions, with comments, with doubts, and they can offer you advice, they can offer you the guidance, but they are not the ones writing the application for you. So this is very important to keep in mind. Next one. So we also count on their support with the feasibility check to ensure that what is proposed in the applications is actually realistic in the local context, meaning that they are the national experts. They are the ones who knows the best about the legal framework of their countries, but they do not have the power to decide who gets selected. They are not the one scoring the applications. They are just checking whether they are feasible or not. And also they are the ones monitoring the development of the business plan, meaning that if you are selected, they are the ones guiding the beneficiaries and helping them in case there are any kind of challenges, any kind of questions when it comes to completing the capacity building and also to writing the business plan. Next one.
All right, thank you so much, Juliana. I'll take over from here.
Yes.
Just a quick bracket in the middle. We told you at the beginning to raise hands in the webinar if you have questions. In the webinar, it's easier actually if you put your questions through the Q&A so that we can already see which questions you have, maybe even answer them in writing as we go along. Because I saw a participant's hand raised, so if you can put your question in the Q&A already, that would be fantastic. And otherwise, we'll get back to you at the end of this presentation. All right, so as a beneficiary, what do you get? Obviously, as Juliana already introduced, the main support that we offer is the financial support, the grant of 45,000 euros. But there's more things that you can get out of the facility if you become a beneficiary, and also if you don't, there are some things that you still have access to, even if you're not a beneficiary. But as a beneficiary, so in addition to the grant, you get access to the facilities capacity building program, which is online. The capacity building program is actually available to anyone. What we do is we organize dedicated webinars for the beneficiaries in addition to the overall capacity building program so that we can go a bit more in depth on supporting you on the development of the business plan. You get access to an overview of national legal frameworks to help you navigate a bit more the context in which you're operating in each of your countries. We're developing as well a database of funding opportunities so that you can see a little bit where you could potentially apply for funding or get loans for your projects that you're developing. Access to best practices, you can exchange with other communities. We're going to also publish some best practice reports on communities that have successfully secured funding or developed interesting funding models because we know this is one of the bottlenecks for energy communities. And obviously you get visibility at national and European level. You saw earlier the map that Juliana showed, where you can get to know all the beneficiaries. This is a dedicated page that we have on the Energy Communities Facility website. So the facility has launched 2 calls for proposals under this current project. The first call took place last year and was open from June to September 2025. And the one that we're interested in today is the one that opened yesterday, which has the deadline of the 5th of July this year at 5 p.m. Why is this call period a bit shorter than last year? It's because, first of all, last year was the first call, so we wanted to make sure that people have enough time to familiarize themselves with the call requirements. But after the last call, we've left them on the website for everybody to have a look at whenever they wanted. And there's been very few changes, which we're going to be talking about today. And also last year, the call was open during the summer period. So we wanted to make sure that we don't interfere too much with people's holidays and that there's enough time for people to apply. So as already mentioned earlier, the grant size is 45,000 per community. This grant is a lump sum grant and it's dedicated to developing a business plan. I'll briefly explain what a lump sum grant is, because this is a question we get a lot. How do we have to justify the expenses and so on? A lump sum grant means you get the 45,000 euros and the requirement is to develop the business plan. There are some other requirements as well that I'll talk about in a bit, but the main deliverable that you have is to develop the business plan. The facility will not ask you for receipts or justifications of expenses as long as you submit a business plan that later gets validated by the facility. The overall budget for the second call is 3,195,000, and that translates into, as Juliana said earlier, 71 grants. So we are going to be able to support 71 energy communities under this call. One question that we get a lot in general is, do we have to compete with everybody? Because obviously there's quite some differences between countries in the way that energy communities are developing, the support frameworks available, and so on and so forth. So what we've done is we've split the countries that are eligible under this program into 2 groups, which we refer to as high uptake countries and low uptake countries. Apologies. And basically the way that these have been split is depending on a few factors. So one of them is the level of development of energy communities in the country, if there are a lot of initiatives in the country, the degree of transposition of the EU directives at the national level. So if there is already a national legal framework available, if there are enabling frameworks available, and to what extent, and also what support structures already exist in the respective countries. So this is how we've grouped the countries at the moment. And you will have to, basically the competition that you'll have is within the group that your country is allocated to. So you won't be competing against all 31 countries. We wanted to go into the timeline for the proposal so that you have an overview of how everything will go. So as mentioned earlier, the call for this round opened yesterday and will be open until the 5th of July. We will then have the evaluation period from July to October, and you will get the results of your application in October. Then after this, within maximum 2 months, we will be signing the grant agreements. And from the moment that you sign the grant agreement, the collaboration officially starts. So you will have 6 months from that moment to develop the business plan and to participate in the capacity building activities. Once you submit the business plan, we enter into the validation period. So the facility will have a look at whether the business plan is complete. What we will not do is say whether your business plan is strong. We're not in a position to say, oh, yes, this will be a successful project. But what we can do is look at the business plan, see if you've asked yourself all the right questions, if you've provided all the relevant information. And based on this, we will then validate or not validate the business plan. I know there's going to be questions about how the validation works and what happens if the business plan is not validated. We're happy to answer them in the Q&A. And then one of the requirements, as I said earlier, we're not asking for receipts, but there are a few requirements that come with being a beneficiary of the facility. So the first one is developing and submitting the business plan. The second one is participating in the capacity building activities of the facility. And the third one is to complete monitoring surveys. So we don't we don't tie the grant to whether you're actually able to implement the project. So the commitment, the requirement is that you submit a business plan, and obviously we hope very much that most and or all of the business plans turn into reality, but there will not be a consequence on whether or not you actually implement the project. However, what we are interested in is seeing how you evolve so that we also get an idea of how energy communities continue their journey after the business plan development, what blockages you might be encountering to also see how what further support needs there might exist in the future. And then one point that I didn't mention that Juliana already mentioned earlier, the little orange squares is we have the EU-wide info session today. There will be national info sessions organized in your national language by each of the national experts in the coming weeks. And throughout the whole application process while the call is open, national experts are available to answer questions that you might have. This is just a slide that I'm going to share with you afterwards again when we send you the materials. It's the same timeline, just in table format, because we know that some people prefer tables to visuals. One common question that we get a lot is, what does a business plan include? So you can find on the Energy Communities Facility website a template that we've developed that we ask beneficiaries to use, which includes different aspects. So it includes financial analysis, obviously, to see if your project is financially viable, analyzing the revenue streams, the capital investments, necessary operational costs, and so on. A technical analysis, so having a look at the project feasibility, the technical studies that you might carry out in order to see if your project is possible. A market analysis, having a look at how do you fit into the current landscape, where do you add value, and so on and so forth. A section about the energy community itself. How do you organize yourself? What is the governance? How do you plan to include stakeholders, your members, actors outside of your membership? How do you plan to generate benefits for your community, both inside the membership and beyond? And a legal section as well, having a look at your national policy frameworks or maybe local policy frameworks, elements that might support or block your project in different ways. And there's more elements to the business plan. We encourage you to have a look at the business plan template on the website and to get in touch then with our help desk if you have any questions at all on the template. Now we're going to dive into the eligibility criteria and also the evaluation criteria. So how will your application be evaluated? There's a few basic criteria that applicants need to fulfill in order to be evaluated at all. So the first thing, and this was a question I saw earlier from a participant, is what do you consider an energy community? So this is what we're looking at here now. The first thing is applicants have to be set up as a legal entity. There are support programs available at EU level, and we know also in some countries at national level that support informal groups. But the energy community definitions say, the EU energy community definitions say that energy communities are legal entities in the first place. So the energy communities facility supports legal entities. Juliana will explain to you later a few programs that support informal groups as well that you might want to look into if you're not yet at the stage of having set up a legal entity. The second criterion is complying with the EU definition of an energy community. So this is also a question we get a lot. Do we have to comply with the national, like, is it fine if we comply to we're looking at the EU definition, and there are very specific questions that we ask you in the application form to understand whether you comply with the EU definition. We don't expect you to know the definitions by heart and to be able to assess this yourself, but we're asking very specific questions so that we can know whether or not you comply with the EU definition of an energy community. And there is on the facilities website an eligibility self-check where we're basically providing you with the opportunity to have a look at whether you comply with the eligibility criteria. And there you will see very specific questions so that you can assess yourself a little bit, do we fit or not? You have to be based in one of the eligible countries under the LIFE program that Juliana presented earlier. You have to commit to completing the monitoring and impact measurement questionnaires that the facility will ask, and also to follow the capacity building program. And finally, to use the grant as intended. So what we saw in the last round is that we had applicants that applied, but they didn't really plan to focus on developing a business plan. They wanted to work on the implementation of the project already. The facility is really designed to help you develop the business plan. So this is what we also need to look at in the eligibility criteria. Now to the evaluation criteria, we look at four overall criteria. One of them is the community operation readiness. So having a look at how much, like what's your experience? What are your governance structures, decision-making processes? Do you have a clear idea of how you will organize yourselves for developing the business plan and also for implementing it? Then we look at the project ambition overall. So maybe a note on this, you don't need to have the most ambitious project ever in order to be selected. What we're looking at is a few sub-elements, such as are you a pioneer within the local context? So is, for instance, your project, are you the first energy community in your city, or are you trying something new that can be a technology, it can be a financial mechanism, it can be some sort of social innovation or something new in that context, how you engage people. Just telling us a little bit if you have something that makes you different in your local context. Again, we're not asking people to be the most revolutionary at national or EU level, but just looking a little bit at how do you differ from what's already available in your local context. How do you address the needs of the community that you're operating in? And is your project something that maybe another community could learn from or could replicate in their context? The third point is about the coherence and the plausibility of your project proposition. So, is the solution that you're looking at implementing or the technology, is this coherent with the needs that you're trying to address? Is it realistic in your local context? The same about the investment size and the funding approach. Again, we're not asking you to have a full idea already while you're submitting the application, but have you thought a little bit more about the project than just saying, hey, we want to put some solar panels on the roof? We're also asking you to give us an idea of some impacts that you expect from your project, and looking at how you plan to engage stakeholders. So that can be your members, but that can also be the community outside of your membership. And also looking at the implementation timeline for your project, basically looking beyond once you finish developing the business plan, what's your rough idea of how you could implement the project? Again, I'm emphasizing we're not asking you to know already everything, because this is what the business plan is for. This is really just to get an idea. Have you thought a little bit about this? Have you done some very basic research to see a little bit how far along you are already in your process? And then the last section is about the impact on the local community, to see if you have the intention or even maybe already a clear idea of how you would reinvest your profits into the community, and also if you have practices that promote inclusivity. So how do you include different types of groups from your community in the project? Now, at the bottom, which is often what people are interested in, we're looking at the scores that you can achieve. The total maximum scores that you can have is 25 points. We ask that any project that is selected has a minimum level of points, which is 15. So this is what we consider the minimum basis for you to be able actually to be at a stage to develop the business plan and possibly also implement it. And then you see the points for each of the categories there, the maximum that you can achieve per category and the minimum that you have to achieve in order to pass that category. So the way that we do it in the evaluation is you have to pass the overall minimum of 15. So you have to have a minimum of 15 points to be considered, but also you have to achieve a minimum, the minimum that is listed in each of the categories. So you might have 17 points, but in the second category, you only had 3 points. And we consider, based on how we've weighted the scores, that if you don't manage to get the minimum score in each of the category, then you're not really yet at a stage where you can successfully develop a business plan. I know this can sometimes make people a bit nervous. We've been very careful to make sure that we're not asking too much in terms of the scoring criteria. So don't get scared off by the point system. It's just to say that it's been set in place to make sure that the communities that become beneficiaries are really able already to develop a business plan, because otherwise it's also of no service to you. Something we wanted to share from our experience from the first call, which we hope will be helpful for you when you develop your applications, the top 10 mistakes that were made in the first round of applications and that we've seen a lot. One of them is that communities applied that weren't actually complying with the EU definitions. So they might not have been a legal entity yet, or they might not comply with the governance criteria, or propose an activity that is not eligible under the EU definition. So this is a very important point. Obviously, make sure that you're a legal entity and that you comply with the activities, governance mechanisms, membership rules, and so on and so forth that are written in the EU definitions. Again, pointing to the eligibility self-check on the website, where you will really see the different questions and you have the information of what the definitions say, what is eligible, so that you can get an idea. Another mistake that was made sometimes was insufficient or invalid proof of legal entity. So one of the documents that you will have to submit, you only have to submit 2 documents with the application. Everything else is questions. One of the documents is a proof that you're a legal entity, because obviously anyone can say, yes, we're set up as a legal entity, but we need to know that this is true. And there's different documents that you can use to do this. They're all listed in the guidelines for applicants, so have a look at those, and if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. One very clear example is that sometimes communities submitted statutes without any official stamp, and this is what we would consider insufficient or invalid proof, because statutes, for example, is something that you can already draft before you actually go through the process of finalizing the legal entity, of registering as a legal entity. So if you submit statutes, make sure that they have an official stamp so that we can see that this isn't just an internal document, but it's part of your legal entity. There's other types of documents, such as a registry from the Chamber of Commerce, or if you have an energy communities registry, which often don't have a legal stamp. So we don't require a legal stamp on every document, but just certain documents, such as statutes, should have this. Some communities provided the information in national language. So one of the requirements is the applications absolutely need to be submitted in English entirely. Any question that you answer in the application form needs to be done in English. We understand that this can be a bit challenging, because obviously, depending on the level of English that you speak, it might not be something that you can do from yourself, but we know, and there are a lot of translation programs available nowadays, so you can basically write the application in your own language, translate it completely, and then copy paste it into the application. The reason is we need to have one language in which we can evaluate your application. And since this is an EU-wide call and English is one of the official working languages of the EU, we're working in English. The reason we're mentioning this here, and we're mentioning this very, very clearly, is because I'm sorry. Can you hear me? I got
Yes,
a
I can hear you.
notification.
Yes,
Okay, good.
you're good.
My system. Because some communities in the last call submitted some answers not in English, and then we're not able to fully evaluate your application. So we're putting a lot of emphasis on this, because these are the tiny things that are really frustrating, both for us and for applicants, to have to reject somebody based on this. So make sure that any answer you provide is submitted in English. The proof of legal entity, the document that you submit, can be in your national language. That is totally fine. Another one, again, it's very small things that we want to make sure that you don't get excluded because of something like this, not using the exact templates provided by the facility. What we're referring to here is the letter of commitment that we ask you to sign. You have it on the website, it's completely laid out by the facility. Please make sure to use this template and to have it signed by your legal representative. We are not in a position, because we get a lot of applications. In the last call, we received over 600, almost 700 applications, and the evaluators have to go through all of them in a very short amount of time. So we do not have the capacity to to check in each of the letter of commitment whether the exact same wording was used, whether there have been any changes or anything. So this is why we ask that applicants use the template that we provide and have it signed by the legal representative. If you use a different template, or if you change the text in any way, your application will be rejected. We won't be even scoring it. Please make sure that you use the template. I'm sorry, I'm emphasizing this a lot, but it's for to make sure that it really lands, because we don't want people to get excluded because of something like this. Another thing is planning to use the grant outside of its intended scope. This is something that I already mentioned earlier. Again, in the guidelines for applicants and also in the call for proposals, you will see exactly which kinds of activities are eligible and which ones are not eligible. On the non-eligible ones, very specifically, is you cannot use the grant for infrastructure investment. So you cannot buy solar panels or batteries with the grant. You cannot buy laptops or this kind of thing. And obviously, because we're talking here about the energy transition, you cannot use the grant to develop a business plan for fossil fuel-based technologies. So make sure that the project that you apply for falls within the scope of the Enercom Facility grant. Another thing that we often saw last year was that there wasn't really a clear project description. So communities put a lot of information in the application form, but at the end of it, sometimes evaluators still didn't have a very clear idea of what the project was actually going to do. So for instance, would it be solar panels on the municipality's roof or something like this? We've adjusted the application form a little bit so that we really ask you very specifically about the information that we need. Make sure to really provide all the information that we're asking you for, so that evaluators can give you the maximum score possible because they have all the information. And more generally speaking, not providing sufficient information in the application form. So again, we've adjusted the application form a little bit this time so that we really ask for very specific things that we need to know in order to do a proper evaluation. Make sure to really answer them. It doesn't need to be long. So you're going to see this is the last point, because sometimes communities provided a very, very lengthy answer, but there wasn't that much information in it. And actually, what we're interested in the end is information. It can be very short, but having the specific information that we ask for, you will see in the application form, there's a lot of clarifications on what we mean by certain things. If you have any doubts, please feel free to contact the national experts. And we also provide in the guidelines for applicants an annotated application form where we have a bit more information, even in case there are any doubts still, on what we're looking for in the specific questions. Then another thing that we saw quite a lot was that there wasn't a very clear link between the community needs and the actions that the energy community was proposing. So for instance, if a community said, oh, the energy prices are very high, but then didn't explain in the application how their project would help address this, or maybe why their project wasn't able to address this, because obviously we don't expect you to solve all the problems or all the needs that are present in your community. But it's useful for us to know, if you're listing the needs that exist in your community, which of these does your project address, and maybe also why does your project not address, or which does it not address, because it's not possible, it's outside your scope, it's not what this project focuses on. Anything is completely viable. It's just a matter of us understanding how things fit together. I can see already a lot of questions popping up. We're looking forward to taking them in a bit. Another point was, in the last round, we had what we now call pioneering, was called innovation. And we've realized this wasn't a very clear, or people often felt like they weren't being innovative, even if they actually were. So actually on this one, we've changed a little bit how we frame the criterion, the way that I explained it earlier. But make sure to actually explain if anything that's new from your side, anything that you're doing that hasn't been done in your local context, feel free to share it, or make sure to share it. But we're not expecting you to be the most innovative with the craziest ideas. It's just a matter of understanding how you're bringing something new in your local context. And the last point I already mentioned, we've also introduced character limits now, so that you don't write 10 pages and you don't feel that you have to write 10 pages, but we've introduced character limits so that you have an idea of what we consider long enough as an answer in order to evaluate your application. Maybe some statistics from the last call so that you have a bit of an idea of how things trickled down. So last round we got 691 applications. We supported 73 communities. And here you can see a little bit the split from the high uptake countries. We received a lot of applications, almost 540, out of which 316 were considered eligible. So they were a legal entity, they were part of the countries that are eligible, they complied with the EU definitions and so on and so forth. And in the end, 44 received the grant out of the high uptake countries, which translates into 8% of the applications. And in the low uptake countries, 152 applications, out of which 61 were considered eligible. 29 in the end received the grant, which translates into 19% of the total applicants. And now we can already move into how you can apply. So on the website of the facility, you will see under the section Apply, Call Documents and FAQs, you will see all of the relevant documents, the call for proposals, the guidelines for applicants. There is also a section with frequently asked questions. So maybe before contacting your national expert, have a look at these and see if somebody has already asked your question and we've answered it. You'll also find the template for the letter of commitment that I mentioned earlier. And then in the resources section, you will be able to find the business plan template if you're curious about what you will have to fill in. So on the website, you will see now that there's the Apply Now button open. The help desk, again, under the section Apply, you will see help desk. And then when you open the help desk, you will be able to select your country that you're in. You put the information, your question, and then this reaches your national expert directly. So you can also ask the question in your national language. And as we mentioned earlier, there are national info sessions being organized in your own language. So keep an eye on the facility website to see when the info session is being organized in your own country. And with this, before we all hand over to questions, I pass on to Juliana to tell you, if you're an informal community, what support programs are available.
Thank you so much, Midian. That was very, very clear. And I already tried to reply to some questions in the comments. We have around 30 questions now, which is great, which means that a lot of people are interested in the facility. Thank you. So for the next slide, please. So I'm presenting to you the Citizen Energy Advisory Hub. As Miriam mentioned, it's very important for us to make it clear that the facility, you can only apply if you are an already established legal entity and you comply with the definitions, the EU definitions of an energy community. But for the Citizen Energy Advisory Hub, the support is not only to energy communities, not only to legal established entities, but also to households, small business, socio-economic actors, small-scale NGOs, municipalities, local authorities, and so on. The main purpose is to reach these actors and offer them the technical support that they need. So for the next slide, please. So the technical assistance, the next call will be opening in September this year. The hub is offering free technical assistance, and it will be up to 40 days of support with an expert in topics such as production, aggregation, storage, energy sharing, self-consumption, e-mobility, anything that is related to renewable energy. The hub is offering support. This is not a financial support. This is on the technicality of your needs. So this is a huge opportunity as well. And if you don't have, for example, an already established legal entity and you are wondering how you can do it, what are the steps that you can take? So this is the perfect opportunity for you, and the call will be open after the summer. So, and more details on that are available on the website. So for the next slide, please. And today, the EU Covenant of Mayors just launched their new engagement action, which is to promote energy communities, to promote a homegrown energy, to inspire municipalities to set up new energy communities to support the ongoing, already established energy communities. They launched this engagement today. And on the next slide, please, you can see how you can participate on this. So if you scan the code, it will guide you to a document on the Covenant of Mayors website. And there are a lot of opportunities to, first of all, share best practices. So if you're an energy community which has a municipality involved and you want visibility, you want to promote your activities, this is the opportunity for you. And also an opportunity to learn more about energy communities, how they can collaborate with municipalities, how the municipalities can be involved in setting up new energy communities, for example. So there are a lot of webinars being organized and opportunity to learn more and to share with your city, with your region, to promote the setting up of new energy communities. So this is it from our side. For the next slide, we have the questions. So we can go through the questions in the comments and see what are the main doubts that we are having.
All right, thank you so much, Juliana. So yes, now we'll get into the meaty part. And we're going to try and answer all your questions during this webinar. And if we don't get to all of them, please don't hesitate to get in touch afterwards so that we can answer them in writing. And we'll make sure to cover them in the frequently asked questions as well, so that everybody can access them. So I'm going to go a little bit in chronological order for now. The first question that we saw is when we established our energy cooperative in December, we were required to submit a business plan to the relevant association. This plan is very rough. It doesn't include any details on certain elements. Is it possible to refine the cooperative's business plan through this call? Unfortunately not. So we've thought about this quite a bit, but we know that in some countries, especially Germany, this is the case for registering an energy cooperative. But the purpose of the Enercom Facilities Grant is to support the development of new business plans. Something that you can do if you are an established legal entity and you have your first project, but you want to develop a different project. So let's say your first project was a solar installation, and now either you want to do a different one or you want to start working with electric vehicles and you need a business plan for this particular activity, you can apply. But we do not support the improvement of an existing business plan for an existing project. The next question is, how would the viability of projects be done in countries that haven't yet adopted the legal framework for energy communities? So one of the things that we do, as Juliana said, the national experts have a look at the applications that are pre-selected and they tell us whether they feel this project will be feasible in the national context. And this is based on their experience in the national context. So even if there isn't a dedicated legal framework for energy communities, they will still know how feasible a project is within the national context with the existing legislation. The next question, how long do you need to be part of an energy community in order to be eligible? There is no timing for this. So I know also that there was a question about the criterion that is called an emerging energy community, which is basically, is this your community's first energy related project? So this is something that we have as a criterion in order to give some points to energy communities that are newer in this field and that might not have such high points on other elements, but to balance the playing field a bit between less experienced and more experienced energy communities. But there isn't any time statute, so you can have registered a month ago as a legal entity or 5 years ago. That doesn't matter. Just going through the questions again. There was a question about some countries that aren't included in the call. If your country isn't listed as part of the eligible countries, I'm afraid that we won't be able to support you from the Enercom facility, but as mentioned earlier, we encourage you to have a look. There's also in the guidelines for applicants a list of programs that support different types of entities and also different types of countries. So we encourage you to have a look there. And also once we publish the funding mapping of the facility, which will be coming this summer, there might be some funds and programs that could support you that aren't covered through the facility.
There is one question. I'm reading them. The main differences between the first call and the second call. I would say the innovation pioneering part that we specified.
Yes.
Um,
Maybe one piece of information that we haven't mentioned yet, but that is actually quite important, is that we want to make sure that we achieve some sort of geographical balance. So we already have the part of splitting countries between high uptake and low uptake so that the competition is fair. And at the same time, we also introduced the criterion of saying we will allocate at least one grant for each of the eligible countries between the two calls combined. So from the whole timing of the facility under this current project, we will make sure that one grant gets awarded at least to each country, provided that you meet the minimum threshold that we mentioned earlier in the evaluation criteria. So we still need to make sure that the applicants or the beneficiaries are in a position to actually develop and implement the business plan. But we want to make sure that at least one grant per country is awarded as long as you meet with the criteria. Indeed, as you said, the innovation criterion, and otherwise it's mostly that we've adjusted the application form because we realized that sometimes even with prompting very clearly, maybe sometimes some points didn't get through. So we've refined it a bit so to really ask very specifically for certain things that evaluators need to evaluate your application.
and one thing that we also did not mention, but it's also very important because I'm seeing all these questions about eligibility. Can I apply if I'm this or that entity association? On the website, you can find the eligibility self-check, which is a tool that we prepared. So in case you are in doubt whether you are eligible to apply or not, you go through the questions. These questions are yes or no. And by the end of it, when you submit those answers, you get if you're eligible and if you can go on with your application. In case of going through this tool and you still remain with some doubts, with some questions, you can reach out to the national experts, as Miriam said, through the help desk, and they are the ones who are best positioned to explain to you about legal frameworks, for example, and the criterias of the facility. So this tool saves us a lot of time in the sense of you are the ones who knows best about your structure of your energy community, and going through this tool also help us understand and help you understand if you're eligible. So this is one piece of information that it's very important, and it's available on our website.
Thank you, Juliana. All right, I'm gonna go through some more questions. One is it mandatory for the business plan to be executed? So obviously, the objective of the facility is to support communities that will really implement projects on the ground afterwards. We also understand that the reality is that sometimes projects can get delayed, things change. So there is no repercussion in case you're not able to implement the business plan afterwards. The requirement is really that you develop the business plan. We're interested in seeing how it evolves afterwards, as I said earlier, with the monitoring that you're going to have to answer a few months after submitting the business plan, but there won't be any repercussions if you're not able to implement it. Obviously, we hope very much that all the projects that we support move forward, but yeah, we understand the reality and there is no repercussion if not. Is it necessary to have an established energy community on the national level to receive the funding? Yes. I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be an energy community as such, because we know that, I mean, energy communities can take different legal forms. So whichever legal form works in your country to be an energy community, but you need to be a legal entity.
Also, I see a question, and this is very important for us to address as well, about the Citizen Energy Advisory Hub. If you're already a beneficiary of this citizen of this hub, can you apply for the Enercom facility? Yes and no, and I'm going to explain it to you further. It's not allowed the double funding. So this is very important to mention. If you apply to the Citizen Energy Advisory Hub for technical assistance regarding something else that it's not the development of a business plan, yes, you can apply to the EnerCon facility. One thing is the double funding means that two different programs cannot fund the same thing. So if you're already a beneficiary of chair working on the development of a business plan, no, you cannot apply. But if you are receiving technical assistance from another topic, yes, you're more than welcome to apply to the EnerCon facility regarding, of course, you comply with the eligibility criteria. And there was another question about the Citizen Energy Advisory Hub that I might have missed, but we move on and then we might come back to it later.
Thanks. All right, keep going through. Sorry. This one we already answered with the rule. Given that in Romania, regulations are still developing for energy communities, is it possible to change the legal entity after submission? So if afterwards it turns out that a different type of legal entity would be more beneficial than the one that you currently have, is that possible? From the perspective of the energy communities facility, yes. I mean, the only requirement that we have is that you apply as a legal entity. There's another question that I saw in the chat, which is very important, whether if you're still in the process of setting up, another entity can apply on your behalf. So for instance, your municipality or something. This isn't possible. So really it has to be the legal entity that is the energy community that applies. If at some point afterwards you want to change the status of your legal entity, that's obviously up to you, but it needs to be really the legal entity of the energy community itself applying right now. So that's two questions answered. Sorry, there's a lot of questions in the chat. Should we translate the name of the documents for the proof of legal entity? It's not necessary. So if you have a translation available, feel free to share it, but the proof of legal entity can be submitted completely in the national language. So some questions are similar, so I'm trying to sort through. Existing energy communities want to develop a common project. Are they eligible? What if they are in two neighboring countries? This is a very good question. So you're talking about a cross-border energy community here. In principle, those are eligible, I believe. There are also other projects that are very focused on cross-border energy communities. We suggest that you maybe check in with the national expert to explain the specific situation so that we can give you a clearer answer. And we will post this on the FAQ afterwards of the Enercom facility because I think this is a very important question. There's another question. If we already have a business plan, we're not eligible. As mentioned earlier, this depends. So if you already have a business plan for one type of project and you want to do another type of project, you can apply for this new project that you want to develop. If you have a business plan for an existing project and you want to update that one, that wouldn't be eligible under the facility. There's a question about the target size of the energy community that applies. We don't have a minimum or a maximum of size for the energy communities that apply. Actually, we're interested in supporting the diversity that exists in the EU, so no minimum or maximum size principle.
I see one. How about the first in the country? When you were explaining about this pioneering part of the application, and I would say yes, this is considered pioneering an energy community. So if I don't know if the question was about if they are eligible or if this counts as pioneering, and I would say yes to both.
Sorry, I'm going through some questions repeat
Me too.
themselves. One was, can you explain better what you mean by an emerging energy community? What we consider emerging is, as I mentioned earlier, a community who is undertaking their first energy related project. So this might be that you've just set up your legal entity and you're going to do your first project because you're an energy community. It might also be that you were set up for a completely different purpose. So you might be an NGO that has been working on biodiversity for now, but now you want up until now, but now you want to move also in the energy field. So your association, your legal entity might be existing for a long time, but you've now decided to move into the field of energy, and this is your first energy related project. So this would also be considered an emerging energy community. I hope this clarifies the question. If you have further follow-up questions, please let us know.
There is one question. Angelos, can we have a clear list of the criteria that a locally registered energy community complies with the EU criteria of energy communities? And this is a great opportunity to also invite everyone to reach out to their national experts. They are the best ones who reply to you. In this case, they are the best ones to guide you through these questions. So they can be found on our website. You can reach out to them, and you don't even need to reach out to them in English, as Miriam already said. They are the national experts. You can reach out in your national languages, and they will provide with an answer.
Thanks. There's a question whether the business plan could use any type of renewable energy, so water, wind, organic fraction, sun. Uh, yes, we're not looking at very specific technologies. Any type of technology that falls under renewable energy or that supports the energy transition is acceptable. What we do not support is fossil fuel-based technologies. What is the definition of an energy-related project? For example, does insulating homes fall under this? Yes. So any activity that an energy community or energy related would indeed also include anything that supports energy savings and building efficiency. Should the innovation be fully commercial yet or still with some level at risk? At TRL 7 or 8. We're not looking at this level of detail. So, okay, I see what you mean. One of the criteria that we look at is the feasibility of your project within your context. So if you have a very innovative project that will not be feasible, this will influence your score. So we're not looking at just getting the most pioneering or innovative projects. As you see, that it's just one criterion out of many. So it's one of the things that we look at, but we've noticed also in the last call that people put a lot of emphasis on how innovative do we have to be. It's one criterion, so it's one aspect that we look at, but it isn't the most important one. It's not that this will get you over the top or whatever in any way. So have a look at all the criteria combined and how your project responds to them, but we're not looking at just getting the most innovative projects out there. And in terms of the risk level, again, we're looking more at the feasibility within, like, the risk would be defined a lot by the feasibility in your project. If you're applying for a business plan that will not be possible to implement at the moment in your country, then this would influence your score. The size we already answered. Could a court-registered NGO meet the criteria of an energy community? And it meets the criterion of being a legal entity. And then whether it meets the criteria of an energy community depends on how you're set up internally in terms of the activities, the governance system, and so on. So we would encourage you to look at the EU definitions in the way that are also explained in the eligibility self-check and see if you feel your legal entity complies with those. I'm just checking more questions.
Yes, there is the latest question. Could you please clarify one thing? during the call about unsuccessful applicants, you mentioned a self-check document covering the 10 most common mistakes from the first call. Yes, it was already included in the presentation. We have some slides about it. And this presentation is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website. So you can check also again later.
And the top 10 mistakes are also listed in the guidelines for applicants with some explanation. So it's not just the list that I presented just now, but also more information on them. There's a question, will there be any calls to execute the business plan? Not under the Energy Communities facility, but there might be other programs that support execution of the business plan.
And talking about that, one thing that it's very also nice that we did not mention is that in June, we will be published on our website a mapping of the available fund sources across Europe. We are currently working on it. On our website, you can already check a map of one-stop shops across Europe. It's been available on our website since October last year, and it's always being updated. So in case you have any other suggestions of one-stop shops in your region that are not listed, you can submit your suggestions. And also this funding map will be available, as I said, next month. So this is something to be aware of, and follow us on social media and stay tuned on our website to check this map.
Thanks, Juliana. A new question, would it be possible to ask for two business plan developments? So it depends. A business plan under the facility can cover several projects. So indeed, we actually have beneficiaries right now that combine different technologies, different projects together in one business plan. So this is possible, but it's only each community can only get one grant. So you can present whichever type of project or combination of projects that you want to develop a business plan for under this one grant, and you can use it for that. But you cannot, as an energy community, get more than one grant, even if it's for two projects.
Also, Luis Nunes has a question about we're only going to set up the community now after we've gone through the rules. Could that be a problem? So the call is open until the 5th of July. So if by that time you already have the documents, you already have the proof that you are a legal entity established, there won't be a problem. If the documents won't be ready on time, there would be a problem and you would not be eligible to apply.
I'm going through. So there's two questions that I would like to get back to you on after the call. One is about the cross-border communities or several communities joining for one business plan. So this is one of the notes I'm taking for the FAQ. So we're going to publish this in the next days. And then the second question, no, these were actually the two. And the second question was about the size of the municipality. If a community operates in multiple municipalities, how should you reply? This is a good question. I need to double check this, so I'll get back to you on this as well. Just for your information, this isn't an eligibility or evaluation criterion. This is information for us because it helps us get an idea of how the applicants are, like of the diversity of the applicants, but it's not a criterion that will give you more or less points depending on the size.
There is a question that it's two in one. We are a school and we would like to start the work to be an energy community, to have green energy at the school. Since we are not professionals about business plan, would it be possible to contract a specialized technical company to develop this business plan? So two in one, by this I mean that if you are not already, and we cannot say this enough, if you are not already a legal entity established, meaning if you are planning on setting up an energy community, you're not eligible to apply. But if you're already an energy community established, you have all the documents, all the proof, and you do not have the expertise to draft a business plan, this is not an issue because with the grant, you can use this budget to hire external experts to draft the business plan. So this is one of the purpose of the grant. If you do not have the in-house expertise, you can hire external ones. And another question about the content of the projects funded for the first call be made public. Yes, we already have the list of the ones selected on our website and the best practice and more about the first call and the beneficiaries will be made public very soon. We first need to go through the evaluations of the business plan, but that's the intention that we have to make this available for everyone as best practice.
There's a question about the division of the 71 grants between high and low uptake countries. Yes, it's available in the either in the call for proposals or the guidelines for applicants. When you look at the high and low uptake countries list in those documents, there is a little footmark and little footnote, and in the footnote it's outlined. Right. There's a question from a national association supporting local energy initiatives with local working groups. Is it possible to apply for the development of a local group's business plan? In principle, the local group itself would have to apply. But again, I'll look into this and we'll get back to you through the FAQ. Will the contents of the projects funded in the first call be made public? So yes, they already are. On the facility website, you can find the current beneficiaries. This page is filled in by the beneficiaries themselves, so there might be more or less information depending on what they've put themselves. But we invite you to explore the map that's on the facility website so that you can get to know the projects that are already being supported.
Some of the questions at the same time that they are different, the topic of them are very similar, which we covered. So that's why some of them we are skipping and not because we're not looking and we're not reading, it's because they were either covered during the presentation and covered again in other questions that we already replied.
There was a question about the eligible expenses. They are listed in the call for proposals. So there's a section of eligible expenses. You'll have the full list there, and then just after that, there is a list of ineligible expenses for the business plan. There's a question here that goes into the legal definitions, the transposition by member states, and how energy communities are beneficial compared to municipalities. I'm afraid this is not a question we can go into because we're here to answer questions about the call itself, but we encourage you to either direct this question directly to the Commission or to get in touch with an association that works on these questions. The best practices funded in the first call could be made public by the June 2022. So the best practices, that report that I mentioned earlier, they will be published a little bit later and will take into consideration communities both from the first and from the second call. But as mentioned earlier, you can already have a look at the website to get to know the current projects. There's also other organizations that published a lot of material about ongoing good practices of energy communities, such as Rescue EU. So you can find a lot of information on their website if you're looking for inspiration. There's a question. Should we translate the name of the documents? For example, we already answered that. You don't need to translate the title of the or the document of the legal entity, and the same for the name of the city, the region, or your organization. Just use the name that is your real name. Will the Enercon facility assist in searching for funding for infrastructure and equipment? Is there a list of EU bodies that could help us? So the funding mapping that we referred to earlier, which will be published this summer, should help you get an idea of funding programs out there. And one of the webinars that we organize for each of the beneficiary rounds focuses on how to develop a funding pitch. So not so much about the funding sources itself, but more about how you draw all the relevant information from your business plan and your financial analysis out of your business plan and how you present this to different types of funding providers in an efficient way. There's a question about that the developing a business plan can be a bit ambiguous, whether we could break down the specific components that would be included. Yes. So on the website, you will find the business plan template that we ask energy communities to use. And communities will have to submit the business plan template, submit a financial model that we provide to the beneficiaries. So once you become a beneficiary, you will be provided with an Excel that helps you develop the financial analysis. This will also have to be submitted with the business plan. The business plan can be developed in your national language because obviously this is a working document for yourselves that you will be using in your own context. However, for the validation, what we ask energy communities is to submit an executive summary in English. And we're publishing on the website as well the executive summary so that you have an idea of the elements that we're asking for in this executive summary. And then another thing that you'll have to submit is basically the capacity building activities, the online program, and the webinars are mandatory for beneficiaries. And once you complete them, you get a certificate, and we ask you to upload that with the business plan. But once you become a beneficiary, you will get a checklist of all the things that you have to submit so that that's very clear.
There is a question about the Citizen Energy Advisory Hub. Our collective household target. Yes, they are. They are eligible because the difference between the Enercon facility and CHEA is that the Enercon facility is mostly focused on legal established entities, energy communities, and CHEA, there is a broader scope of delivery of technical assistance. So yes. And the next call will be open in September 2026.
So someone already went in and did the eligibility self-check and has a question on question 2.4. So question 2.4 is about governance and effective control of the energy community. So the question here is whether your internal governance, the way that you take decisions, who is able to make executive decisions within your energy community, whether this is in line with the EU definitions. So the EU definitions, as you might know, there are two EU definitions, one for renewable energy communities and one for citizen energy communities. And depending on the type of energy communities, different actors can have effective control of the energy community. So in the case of renewable energy communities, it has to be controlled by participants that are located near renewable energy project and owned by the community. And the actors that control the energy community cannot have energy as their primary economic activity. So it cannot be an energy company that becomes a member of an energy community and that then controls this energy community, for example. And in the case of citizen energy communities, they have to be controlled by natural persons, local authorities, or small enterprises, medium. Yeah. I don't know if this answers your questions, your question on this point. When will be the next call for applications after this one? The Enercon facility's current contract goes until summer 2028, and within this current contract, we organize two calls. So for this current project, this is the last call. We don't know whether there will be future ones. So for now, this is the only one that we can commit to. What if you applied for the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub's call for technical assistance, which doesn't involve any financial support, and you don't have info yet whether you have been accepted? Is it possible to apply? It's possible to apply based on the information that you have right now. What we do need to make sure, like, should you get accepted by both, as Juliana said earlier, we would need to make sure that these two initiatives aren't funding exactly the same thing. So if the call for technical assistance will be used to build the project, let's say you get an expert that actually puts the solar panels on the roof, that's business plan implementation. That's not funded by the facility, so this would be two different things. So, but if, for instance, the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub's technical assistance would help you in supporting the development of the business plan itself, then if you get accepted by both, we would have to have a look because we can't accept double funding. But so, in principle, I would encourage you to apply, keeping in mind that if you get accepted by both and they support the same thing, then there would have to a decision to be made on which of the two you go for. Is it obligatory to have a rule of one person, one vote? Not necessarily. So democratic governance can take different forms. The most obvious and straightforward one is often used by energy communities is one person, one vote. But there are different ways in which you can ensure democratic governance and in the sense of the EU definitions. There's another question about the size of community of the project, again, whether they have to have a minimum size in terms of the membership or the project. There isn't. Feel free to apply with any type of size that you're at and the project that you're looking to support, to develop. If you have a cooperative that will change the statutes to consider the energy area as an activity, how do you inform of that situation in the submission? There is a section in the application form where you explain who you are. So that's about the energy community. So just feel free to explain that you were set up for a different type of activity and that you now want to move into the energy field, explain why. And this is perfectly fine. And I assume that if you're a legal entity or cooperative, you have some sort of proof of legal entity. So that is perfectly acceptable. Checking about the EU definition of energy community, there's two definitions indeed, citizen energy community and renewable energy community. Are they both eligible? Yes. So as long as you comply with one of the EU definitions, you are eligible.
The latest question, can those who apply to the first call when we're not funded apply to the second one? Yes, of course. Please reapply. As long as you are eligible, you are more than welcome to reapply.
There's another one about a community that is in the process of registering. I'm sorry, but under the Enercom facility, you would have to already be registered. We had this question quite a lot in the last call as well, but for the Enercom facility, we only accept entities that have already completed the registration project process. As mentioned earlier by Juliana, and also in the guidelines for applicants, there's information about support programs that are available to entities that aren't fully set up yet. Checking if there's any questions that if you see me dismissing questions that you have asked, it's because we already answered them in some form or another in the webinar.
There is one. We have already an aid to experiment the installation of a Rio chair. Can we candidate for your aid as well? And then again, one thing that is very important is the double funding. And the main purpose of the Enercon facility is to fund the development of a business plan. So if you are applying to any other projects, if you are applying to any other sources that do not clash with the development of a business plan, you are welcome to apply to the NLCon facility.
Are there any new? When applying, is it necessary to inform how you're considering the application of the grant? Yes, we have a question where we ask you how you plan to use the grant. This is more for transparency. So as I said, we're not going to ask you um, about receipts. Afterwards, when you get the grant, we the only receipt that we're asking for is the final business plan. But we do ask how you plan to use the grant to get an idea, mostly to see again how much you've already thought about this, because we have a broad variety of communities applying, and some say are at the stage of saying, oh, we thought we might want to do a wind project, and this is the level of thought that they've put into this. And so this might be a riskier situation than a community that says, okay, we've thought about doing a wind project. We know that we're going to have to do a technical study. We're going to have to do this and that, so that the evaluators get an idea a little bit of how far along in your thinking are you? How are you approaching this? So even if your idea is very new and you haven't actually taken any steps yet, showing us that you know which steps you need to think through, this is very helpful in evaluating your application. The project makes some reference to community needs. Sorry. Okay, there's some questions that relate to very individual feedbacks that people received in their application. I would encourage you to get in touch with the national experts for this, so that we can focus here on the call itself, but we're very happy to answer your questions. A question whether a very new renewable energy community with very few members can participate to develop an attractive business plan. Yes. So if you can convincingly explain how the current setup of your community is already fit to develop a sound business plan, because you might be a very small group at this point, but you might already know who might be joining. You might have very experienced people in the community. So being very new doesn't necessarily doesn't prevent you from applying. And depending on how you set up, it's a possibility that you get accepted. Can you totally change the business plan if some analysis shows that the project isn't feasible? Yes, with conversations. So obviously we evaluate the applications based on the project that you submit in the application, and the idea is that your project would go forward. We understand, however, since the business plan includes the technical studies, that it might be that you realize during the development that the exact project isn't feasible, something changes or so on. If you need to change it, then I have a conversation with the national experts so that we can see how we can adjust. What is not anything that you can reasonably justify, basically, I think is the short answer. If you can reasonably justify and explain why you need to change the project and how and why you didn't know this beforehand, then we can be quite flexible. What would be problematic is if you apply, let's say you apply with a project of 3 wind turbines and some storage, and then all of a sudden you say, oh, actually, we're just going to put some solar panels on a roof. This would be a bit problematic. So any changes that you make, even if that was the change, that it can be accepted if it's reasonably justified. But the idea is hopefully that the project goes through. But we also know that sometimes things can change, and if as long as you can explain, we have some flexibility. Are there any further questions since we're reaching the end of the session? I see some questions that we didn't manage to get to. We have a note of them. So those that are applicable to a broader group, we'll put them in the FAQ. If they're very personal and individual, we would encourage you to ask the question through the help desk so that we can get back to you individually because I see that some situations are very specific. Um, and we'll be happy to answer the questions individually. Hmm. Okay. If there
Yeah,
are
I see some questions
no,
that are very national target. So yeah, besides the help desks, we are currently updating the website. Someone asked this previously, and I wrote an written answer, but also saying this here that on the event section of our website, you can see all the national info sessions that are currently being organized by our national experts, and they are obviously free and anyone can attend. So if your question was very national specific here and we didn't manage to reply, please feel free to register to these national info sessions and to rely on our national experts to get back to you.
thanks, Juliana. Another question that just came in is that you can't find the list of approved projects on the website. There is in the news section, there's an article that presented the projects that were or that listed the projects that were selected. And then on the we can put it in the FAQ as well so that you can have a look at the current map. All right, if there is no further questions that we haven't answered, I see that there's already some thank you messages coming in, so I think we're slowly closing up. Thank you very much. Oh, there is one question. No, it's not coming in. Okay, if you have any further questions, please feel free to get in touch to the help desk. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we really look forward to receiving your applications.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, it was a bit frozen. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for connecting with us. I saw that at some point we had almost 190 people listening to us. So thank you. And it's always great to see the amount of interest that the people have shown to the facility. And we are waiting for your applications. Thank you so much. Have a
See
nice day.
you. Bye.